Hi guys, it's Mr. Z, and I just wanted to give you a rundown on how the chromatography lab should run and the materials that you have and how you should go about performing the experiment. First of all, you want to make sure that you have your handout and do read the pre-lab introduction, and also have your pre-lab questions finished before you proceed. When it comes to the procedure, make sure you're reading your way along and answering questions where you're instructed to do so. So the materials that you have to perform the experiment, and again, the focus of the experiment is to separate the pigments that are in a leaf. And we're also separating the pigments that we find in black ink. Now this is wet erase marker ink. And the leaf that I'm using is actually a piece of collard green, which is something that we keep around to feed the animals. You're going to be using spinach, but it'll work the same way. So I'm going to use this to demonstrate because I don't have the spinach today. So the first thing I did was, in setting up your materials, was I put some water. I used a pipette to put about 1 milliliter of water in the bottom of this screw top vial. And that's for separating out the ink. Because it is wet erase ink, water will work as a solvent to dissolve the pigments from the pen and allow you to separate them out. For the leaf, we need a special chromatography solvent that has been purchased from Ward Scientific Company. So that's what we'll be using for that. And the reason for that is because the pigments in a leaf are organic compounds, and we need a solvent that is an organic solvent for those organic compounds to dissolve and then be able to be separated out in this system. When you come to your lab station, you'll find that you'll have 2 pieces of chromatography paper. And this is special filter paper that's going to allow you to separate out the pigments as the pigments move up the paper. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a very concentrated spot on the paper near the bottom of one of the strips. Now I've already done this for you at your lab station. When you get there, you're going to find what you see here. One piece of paper that doesn't have anything and another piece that has a black spot at the bottom. One of the first things you'll want to do is take the one with the black spot and cut a triangle in the bottom of the paper, like so. So you've got a triangle at the bottom, triangular point at the bottom. With the other paper, do the same thing. You haven't sampled your leaf yet onto this paper, but that's what this paper is for, is to sample your leaf on. So the second thing you should do is go ahead and cut a triangular point at the bottom of the other strip. The other thing you might want to do at this point is make sure that those strips are going to fit into the vials, that they're not too long. I tried real hard to make sure that I cut them all the right length so that you wouldn't have to trim them, but it's possible you might have to trim them. So both the one that goes into the ink and the one that goes, or the one that goes into the ink vial and the one that goes into the leaf vial. Now the way that we sample the leaf, basically what we're doing is we're getting the juice from the leaf onto the paper, just like I spotted the ink onto the paper. We want it to be as small and as concentrated a spot as possible. And so what we're going to use for that is a penny. That's why you have a penny at your station. And what you want to do is you want to identify the top of the leaf and put it top side down over the paper, over where you want to place the spot. Now you want to try to place the spot about 1 centimeter up from the tip that you just cut into the paper, similar to where the spot is for the ink. And that can be kind of tricky because you can't really see where you're spotting, but once you place your leaf over the paper, then press with the penny, and you'll notice that we have transferred some leaf juice, basically the pigments along with it, into the paper. And we want to go over that spot, and we want to try to hit that same spot many times over and over and over to make that spot as concentrated as possible with leaf pigment. Reason being, once the pigment spreads out on the paper, the more pigment there is, the easier it's going to be to see. Once it spreads out, if there's not a lot of any particular pigment after it spreads out, you're not going to be able to see it if there isn't plenty of it on the paper. So we want to make that spot as small and concentrated as possible. And I know it's not as small and concentrated as our ink spot, but you know, it's a lot easier to do a small concentrated spot with a pen than it is for a leaf. So here's our starting strips, nice triangular tips at the bottom, both of them sampled with spots about 1 centimeter up from the tip. And then we place them into our chromatography chambers, these vials. We can refer to them as our chromatography chambers. You want to make absolutely sure that you put the one with the ink into the ink vial that has water in the bottom, because it, like I said, it's wet erase marker. And you want to do this very carefully, and that's why you have a pair of forceps. So take your forceps and use the forceps to lower the paper down into the vial. The other thing you want to make sure is that the paper is straight, relatively straight. The paper was cut off of a roll like this, and so it started out curved. So you need to try to straighten it out. That'll help a lot. Once you place the paper into the vial, don't shake it around. Put the cap back on and very gently and carefully transfer it into the beaker that I provided, one for each vial. The reason for that is that the beaker will keep the vials from falling over. You don't want them to fall over because that'll ruin your results. So this is actually an addition to the materials that you'll find listed on your lab. I also recommend not placing the beakers with the vials onto the paper, because if you move the paper, then like I just did, it moves the vials in the beakers. So you want to keep your hands off and just let them run. You can see already that we're getting some streaking here as the water is working its way up the paper, and it's carrying with it the pigments from the ink. Same thing will happen with the leaf, but at this point I want to leave this all a mystery, and we'll see what your results look like when we're all done. So have fun with the lab, but also understand why it is you're doing what you're doing as you work your way along, and then we'll see what happens. Have a good one.